Hi, Kita Gimel. I'm up to, I think, part 5 of the Passover story, and I'm just going to go right into it. We're up to the fourth plague. I'm a little bit of a mess, and my kitchen's a mess behind me, but everything's okay. Okay, so for the fourth plague, God said to the Moses, "Early in the morning, present yourself to Pharaoh as he is coming out of the water." This reminds us of what the setup was for the first plague. And in fact, there are these groupings where they group the first three plagues, the next three plagues, and then the 7 through 9, the third set of three plagues, and then with the last plague being kind of set aside. And there are patterns they find. So the first plagues of each of those ones, so the first, fourth, and seventh, have this setup where early in the morning, Moses and Aaron are supposed to go to Pharaoh, and in this case they're supposed to say, God says to let my people go that they may worship me, for if you do not worship me, I will let loose Arov. The reason I'm using the Hebrew word is because there's some disagreement about how to translate that. Some people translate it as wild beasts, and some people translate it as swarms of insects. I am going to use swarms of insects because that's what the Eitz Chaim uses, that red book we see in the sanctuary when we go for music and tefillah. And this has, the Torah in Hebrew, the Hebrew of the Torah, and then translation in English, fortunately, because I really need that translation. Okay, so I will let loose swarms of insects, and they will swarm against you and all your courtiers and your people, and here we have something new, but I am going to set aside the land of Goshen, which is a section of Egypt. And we heard about Goshen in the Joseph story. We didn't read this part, but it's in at the end of the Joseph story, when Jacob, Joseph's father, comes to Egypt, the whole family is reunited, and Joseph, who's a big man in charge in Egypt, arranges for them to live in the area of Goshen, which he thinks is a nice place for them. And so now God is saying, I will set aside the land of Goshen, because that's where all the Israelites are. And I will make sure that no insects are in Goshen. And so that you'll know that I'm protecting the Israelite people. I'm making a distinction between the Israelites, who I consider my people, and the Egyptians, who are your people. And this shall happen tomorrow. And that's what happened. And the swarms of insects came, and the land was ruined, because, the insects, they eat everything. And if it was wild beasts, they trample everything. So then Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron and said, go to sacrifice to your God. That's what they've been asking for. But do it within Egypt, within this land. And Moses replied, we can't do that. That wouldn't be right, because what we sacrifice is untouchable to the Egyptians. Maybe some of the animals, I don't know, cows, sheep, I don't know what the animals are that are untouchable to the Egyptians. But Moses says if they offer the sacrifices when the Egyptians are around, then the Egyptians might actually hurt them, because it would be objectionable to them. It would be upsetting to them. So, and he's also letting Pharaoh know that he's not going to negotiate, because why has Moses been asking for 3 days? He's been asking for 3 days because God said, go travel for 3 days into the wilderness and sacrifice to me and worship me. And so Moses refuses that arrangement that Pharaoh suggests and says, I'll leave, and I'll plead with God to end this plague, and Pharaoh says he'll let them go. But Moses says, let not Pharaoh act again deceitfully. Don't trick us again. Don't change your mind again. And you really have to live up to your word. So Moses leaves Pharaoh's presence, pleads with God. God does as Moses asks, and all the insects are gone. God removes all the insects. Not one remained, but Pharaoh became stubborn this time also and would not let the people go. So then we have the next plague. God says to Moses, go to Pharaoh and let my people go in order for them to worship me. And this time the plague is is pestilence, cattle disease. The plague is going to affect the livestock, the horses, the donkeys, the camels, and the cattle, and the sheep. And so, and here we have a separation. Also, God says, I will make sure that none of the livestock of the Israelites will die. Now you might ask, they're slaves. They have livestock? Yes, they have livestock. What can we say? So this is supposed to happen tomorrow, and that's indeed what happens. The next day, all the livestock of the Egyptians die, but not one of the livestock of the Israelites die. And even though Pharaoh asked and found out that he knows that none of the Israelite livestock died, but he becomes stubborn and would not let the people go. And then God said to Moses and Aaron, each of you take a handful of soot from the kiln. We hear the word kiln when if you do ceramics, you cook your piece gets heated up in the kiln at a very high degree. So kiln is like an oven. And so take the ash from the kiln and let Moses throw it toward the sky in sight of Pharaoh. It shall become fine dust all over the land of Egypt and cause boils to break out. I don't know if you've ever seen a boil. It's like a lump on the under the skin. It's filled with disgusting stuff, and it's unpleasant and uncomfortable. And so you'll throw up the soot. It'll be like a fine dust. It'll turn cause the boils to break out on the people and on the animals of Egypt. And so they did this, and Moses threw it up. The boils break out. Then we hear about the magicians. We have not heard from the magicians for a few plagues here, but now it says the magicians were unable to confront Moses because they too were afflicted by the boils. They had boils all over them, just like all the other Egyptians. God stiffened the heart of Pharaoh, and he would not do as they asked. So now we have something. Did you notice what I just said? I said God stiffened the heart of Pharaoh, and he would not do as they asked. In the prior plagues, in the first 5 plagues, because now this is number 6, in the first 5 plagues, we're told that Pharaoh's heart was hardened. More like Pharaoh was just stubborn. He didn't want to do as the Israelites asked. But here, God is the one making Pharaoh's heart to be hard and making him stubborn. Why would God do that? This is a question that gets a lot of attention. Maybe you've even heard some people talk about this at one of your seders. Many people find it troubling because if Pharaoh's not free to make a decision to let the people go, then why is God bringing the plagues? It's confusing. How can Pharaoh do the right thing if God is preventing him? Shouldn't he have the ability to act on his own? And one explanation that is given is that Pharaoh had 5 opportunities to do the right thing with each of the first 5 plagues. But once you keep making a bad decision and doing something that is wrong, hurtful to other people, you might forfeit the right to make your own decision. In the next plagues, with number 7, I believe, we'll find out. We're going to be given a reason. Why is God setting this up? Why is God continuing to bring plagues even though God is the one hardening Pharaoh's heart? So you'll have to wait for next time to see that. All right, take care, Kita Gimel. Hope you're all doing well.